Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome back. So today we are going to discuss about the Java interview questions and answer. So one of my friend has recently given interview on HCL for the Java developer profile. So he has shared me all the questions which has been asked in the interview. So this will be helpful for whoever is trying to give the interview for 3+ year of experience. So according to him the questions were kind of not very hard, but I will say that not also very easy. So it was actually the medium type of questions, and some questions were little bit tricky. Yeah, so we will see all the questions which has been asked to him in the interview. So actually he was having 3 year of experience approx as a Java developer. So let's move ahead and let's check the first question. So the first question was asked him was regarding tell me about yourself and all. So I believe that these questions you can manage. And the second question, I remember he told that he has been asked that which Java version he has used in his project. Okay. And the third question was technical regarding the core Java. And the first technical question was asked what is the difference between equals to operator and dot equals to method in Java, and can you override one without affecting the other? So for this, you can answer like this, that equals to operator compares the reference. So basically, it compares the object where the memory address are located. So let's say that you have a two object. So of course, that object will be stored in some memory address. So if you want to check whether those two object has the same memory or a different memory location, then you can use equals to operator. So basically it compares the reference or the memory address where that object are stored. Okay. And so basically so this means this equals to operator compares the memory address for object, and for primitive types like integer, character, it compares value. So equals to operator has two functionality. If we compare object, then it compare the memory address where it has been stored. Okay. If both object are stored in different location, then of course it will return false. If both object are stored in the same location by chance, then it will return true, right? And if we will use equals to operator to compare the primitive, then it will check the value. Okay. And dot equals to method, it basically defines. Yeah, so basically this dot equals to method is already overridden inside an object class. Okay. So it is intended for logical or the content equality. So with this dot equals to method, you can compare the content, whether the content of the two uh, object or yeah, so object are equal or not. Okay. And this can be overridden to provide custom comparison logic. So if you want to override this equals method, then you can go ahead and overwrite in any Java class. Basically, this dot equals to method is already overridden in the object class, and this is used to basically compare the content equality, right? So these yeah, so this is a definition about equals to. And the okay, so the important rule about dot equals to method is that if you override dot equals to method, then you should also override hashcode. Okay, to maintain the general contract for hash based collection like HashMap and HashSet. Yeah, so this also we are going to see later in this video, that what is the contract between the equals to and the hashcode. But you should always remember, and you can answer in this manner, that dot equals to. So if you're overriding dot equals to method in your Java class, then you should also override the hash code. So that is the best practice actually, because we should always see the contract should not get invalid between the hash and the equals method. Because if you will use hashmap or hashset, then it is very necessary that the hashmap and the hashset should work into the proper manner. Then you should always override both methods equals to and the hash code in your code. Okay, so now, so let's see some example in a code how it compares the memory address for object, and how it compares the value for any like primitive type like integer and character. Okay, yeah, so like this we can see. So let's go to uh, our IDE. Okay, so here already I have created classes. Okay, so this one like primitive example class which is a main method, and then you can see I have just like added integer a equals to 5 and integer b equals to 5, and here we are using equal equals to operator. So as I explained already, that here we are comparing with a primitive type. So basically it should compare the value, right? Here you can see a equals to b, then it should print true, right? So let me run and let's check. Yeah, so you can see that we got a true. Now if I change this value to 6, then now it should give us false, right? Because it compares the value of this variable, because these is of integer primitive type. Right now you can see we are getting false because it compares the value content for that variable a and b, right? In the similar manner, we can check about the object. Uh, yeah, so in this example you can see what I am doing. I have created one string with the new operator, and the val and the value I am storing as a Java string. And again I am creating one more string str2 with the new operator, and here I am storing again the Java. So here for both string str1 and str2, the content are same, right? Java Java. But these two both are stored into a different memory location, because I am creating the object of this string, both string with the new operator. So of course it will assign to a different memory address into the heap memory, right? And then what I am doing, I'm trying to compare with the equals to operator. So as I told you earlier, that if we will compare any object with the equals to operator, then always it should compare the memory address. Okay, so it will get the memory address of str1 and str2. It will check if the memory address is equal, then it will return true, otherwise it will return false. All right, and then in the second line number 8, we are just using dot equals to method to see that both content are equal or not. Okay, so let me run this and then we will see the output again. All right, so you can see the first we are getting false and second is true. Why false? Because as I told you, in object it compare the address, and we are creating this str1 with the new operator. Okay, str1 and str2. So and I told you that both will be stored into a separate memory location in the heap. So that's why the memory address are not equal. That's why it is giving false. And for the second output it is giving true, because it is checking the content of this str1 and str2. Okay, so there is one more important thing you need to know, that dot equals to compares content. So here we are getting true because string class has already overridden a equals method, which is used to check the content, that whether the content of this string is equal or not. Okay, so this is the reason, because a string class has already overridden the equals method in such a manner that always it will compare the value of that string. Here you can see the value is Java Java, so that's why it is and it is already overridden in a string, then that's why it is just comparing and checking, so we are getting true. In the similar manner, if I change the content of one, okay, and now if I try to run this, now let's see what we are getting. So earlier we got false and true, now you can see we are getting false. Okay, so why you are getting the second output as a false? Because the content now is not same. content is changed. First for str1 it is java1, and for str2 it is java. And as I told you, in a string class already it is overridden to check the content. So content is not matching, so we are getting false, right? So similar manner, so let's check one more example. If we want to use the customize object, okay. So let's say that for that we have okay, first we will see like without equals, okay. So what yeah, so what I want to show you here, that we have one like person class, okay, with a name variable, and this is our constructor which I'm using to store the value of the name to this property. All right, in the main method we are trying to create the object of this person class p1, where we are assigning like Alice as the name of this person p1, and same Alice we are storing to this person 2. Okay, now we are checking with the equals to operator, and then we are checking with the dot equals to. Okay, so now let's run this and then I will explain you. So here the main thing to observe, that in a person class we have not overridden the dot equals to. Okay, so let's see how it behaves first. So for this uh, okay, so we are getting for both output, we are getting false, false. Why? Because as I told you that equals to will always check the address, and here the address are different because both are different object basically. So that will be stored in some different address in the heap memory. That's why we are getting false in the first output. In the second output, p1 equals to p2. Technically if you observe, then it should give you true, right? Because both has the same name, but it is giving false. Why? Because we have not overridden the equals method to check the content. Okay, so if you want to check the content into a custom class, then again you need to override dot equals to method. But in our earlier case, when we have seen I mean in this string, we didn't need to override it. Why? Because in a string class, as I told you, that there is a concept that already dot equals to method has been overridden, okay, internally, to check the content of it. So that's why it is not required to override it to check the content, that the content of that object are equal or not. But as we create a custom class, then if we are not overriding the dot equals method, it means dot equals to method is not overridden to check the content. So that's why in the first case we are getting false. Now let's see an example where simply we will override the equals to method, okay, in this person class. And here we are just overriding this equals method and adding some logic to, so that it should check with the name, okay, so with the content. uh, so here the name is the yeah, so like name is the property in this person class, so we are just overriding to check the content. Now the here you can see p1 is Alice and the p2 is also Alice, and the similar code is there, only we have overridden with the equals method. Now let me run this and let's see what we are getting the output, and then I will explain you. So now you will observe we got true as the second output. Why? Earlier we got false, but now why we are getting true? Because now we have implemented this equals method, overridden the equals method of the object class, and we have told him that it should check the name. If the name of this both object person 1 and person 2 are same, then you should return as a true, otherwise return as false. And we have provided alias, so it is checking the name, and here the equals method is returning true, so that's why we got true here in the second, right? Yeah, so this is the most important concepts whenever you have to uh, check the content of an any object with the value, whether the value of that object is uh, equal or not for your custom classes, then you should always see to override the equals method. Okay, but if you are checking the content of a string, then you don't need to then you no need to override the equals method in a string, because string has already like internally overridden the equals method, right? Yeah, so this is example where you can see for a custom class how it has been implemented, right? Yeah, so for a real example, for a real life example, I can say you think of that okay, so let me bring you to the ppt. Okay, so this already we discussed. So yeah, so for a real life, I can tell you that you can think of that equals to operator is comparing the two houses address. Okay, and that they are in the same building or not. And think of that dot equals to method is comparing the content of the house. Okay, whether they have the same furniture, same tv inside it, right? So basically equals to operator check the address of particular object, and dot equals to method checks the content of that object are same or not. Okay, so this way you can remember it. Now let's see some basic difference between equals to and dot equals to method. So equals to operator can be overridden. No, it cannot be overridden in java because it is an operator. And and operator like overriding is not supported in java. But do dot equals to method can be overridden? Yes, of course. In Java, it is possible. And also we have checked how we can override the dot equals to method, right? But the default behavior of equals to like operator is to compare the reference, and dot equals to compares the reference only for object. If it is primitive, then it will compare the value. Sorry, yeah, sorry, so like dot equals to will always compare the reference of object. Now can we use for primitive for the operator? Yes, we can use to compare the value. But dot equals method cannot be used into the primitive, I mean with the integer or character it cannot be used, right? So for equals to operator can be only used with object also, yes, to compare the reference. And dot equals to method of course can be compare content, right? So best for equals to operator is for reference check, and dot equals to method is for logical equality or content check. Okay, yeah, so like I hope you got a very depth idea about equals to and dot equals to, uh, right? So yeah, so like let's move to the next question. So the next question was that, so an example where dot equals to method is overridden but not hashcode, and explain the consequences. So yeah, so as I told you earlier into the important notes, that always remember, if you are overriding dot equals to method, then always try to override hashcode. If you will not override it, then you may get consequences in your java project. If you are using certain like hashcode, I mean the hashmap or hashset or any collection regarding the hashing technology, right? So this is again the important question he has been asked, and this is very tricky also if you don't know the concept. Okay, so let's say a scenario. Okay, so we will yeah, so to answer this I will take one scenario. So that you are creating a class with employee name, where two employees are considered equal if they have a same id. So you override dot equals to, but you forget to override hash code. Okay, so then let's see what is the consequences will happen with this. Okay, so for this I will try to take you to an example. Okay, so let's see this example where I have one employee, but here, okay, so this is one employee class where the properties are id and name. We have one constructor for initializing these variables id and name. And here you see I have overridden an equals method to compare with the id. If the id of these both employees are equal, then it means the employees are equal. Okay, and here you can see I have commented the hash code. So here you have to remember in this scenario that only the equals method has been overridden by the developer, but hash code is not overridden. So what consequences he may get? So we have a main method, and now I have created one object of this employee class E1 with ID 101 and name as John. Second employee ID I have created with the ID 101 and again name as John. Now, if I try to compare it, E1 dot equals, E1 dot equals E2. Okay, we will see the output. And then again we have, so again we have created a one hatch set in which we are adding both this E1 and E2. Okay, and now let's see, and then we will see the size. Okay, so let me run this, and then first we will see the output, and then we will try to investigate, and then I will try to answer about the output. So in the first output we got true. Okay, why we got true? Because we have overridden the hashcode method. That is true, right? That is completely as per our logic. We have overridden equals method to compare the id of the two employee, and here ids are one not one, and again for employee two one not one. So that's fine, it is giving us true. Now what happens to the second output? Here we are using hashset, and we know that in hashset, in set basically it doesn't store the duplicate element, right? If you try to add a duplicate element, it will not store it, right? So this is the functionality of hashset or any set. So here we are using set dot add e1, set dot e2, and as per equals method, it should basically not add the second one because e1 is already there, right? But why we are getting has set size is 2? Okay, you can see, right? HCL side is 2. It means it has added both the employee object, employee 1 also, employee 2 also. Although the IDs are same, we have overridden the equals method to compare the ID, but still it is not consider this as a duplicate object by the headset, because that's why it is giving the size as 2 and it has added both the object, right? So why is the problem here? Okay, why this is problem? The problem is that dot e1 dot equals to e2 returns true, so logically they are same, right? But hasset store them both, but hasset is storing both the object. That's why we are getting sizes too. So basically it first check the hash code of e1 to find the bucket, and e1 and e2 have a different hash code because we have not overridden the hash code. That's why e1 object and the e2 has a different hash code, right? So it places them into a different bucket. So as a result, hasset fails to recognize them as a duplicate. Okay, now let's see how we can fix this, because actually this should not be the scenario. Actually it is like yeah, so here the contract between the hash code and equals method is not followed, right? So as a contract, it should if we are overriding the equals method, then the hash code should consider this as the same, the duplicate element, but it is not considering it because we have not overridden the hash code method. Okay, so now it is considering as a different hash code. It means it is producing different hash code for both e1 and e2. That's why it is considering as a different, so that's why it is adding and giving the size as 2. But this is the problem, actually it should not act like this. So to correct this, what we need to do, let's check. So we can comment this. Okay, so this is my yeah, so this is my hash code. So let's say I have overridden the hash code also. Okay, we are creating a random hash code with the id. Okay, we are taking the id, with the id we are creating one hash code value. Now what will happen? Okay, earlier we got size 2, right? Now let me run this and see the output. Now you see we got hash set as size 1. Why? Because now it is producing hash code, and the hash code value of both employee 1 and employee 2 are same. Why? Because we are giving the given the logic, we have overridden the hash code that it should produce the hash code as per its id. Now id are same, it means it should it should consider or it should produce the same hash code. When it produces the same hash code, then HashSet consider it as a duplicate element. So we know that HashSet property is to not add the duplicate. So that's why it eliminated it, and only we are getting the size one, right? So if you override dot equals method, you must also override hash code. Otherwise, object are equal. Okay, may not behave properly in hash based collection. So in the hash based collection in your project, it may act weird, and you should consider this. If in any class, if you are working with the hash code with the custom classes, then always if you are overriding equals, then always override hash code. Okay, yeah. So this is the one very important question asked in interview, and if you explain him like this, then I believe the interviewer will get fully satisfied with you, and he will know that you are having a very depth knowledge about all this basic concept. And this is also one of the tricky question, right? They try to understand, and they will try to means give you an example, and then they will try to check your knowledge about all this point, right? So let's move to the third question what he has been asked. The third question was, do you know the contract between equals to and hash code, right? Yeah, so already I've explained you this, okay, but okay, so I will take a PPT to explain into more like deft manner, so that because this is very important question, okay. So from the Java SE documentation, if we try to explain it, so whenever equals is ever like overridden in your Java class, then hashcode must also overridden to maintain the general contract of hashcode method. Okay, so which states that when a hashcode contract, okay, so regarding the hashcode contract, it says that because of consistency, the multiple calls to hashcode must return the same value if the object state isn't same. So this is one point, that if there is a multiple call to the hashcode, then always it return a same hashcode value. For this reason, we should always override a hashcode. Again, equals object must have equals hash code. If the objects are equal, if we are overriding like equals method, then it will produce so it will make your object equal, right? If object are equal, then always it should have a hash code value as an equal, I mean the same hash code value, right? For example, if a dot equals method b returns true, then a dot hashcode equals to b dot hashcode must also be true. For this reason, because this is the contract, okay, so these points are contract which you should take care. Or the third point, unequal object may have same hash code. Okay, so if two objects are not equal, then may still it have the same hash code. Okay, so that is acceptable. If two objects are not equal, then it may or may not have the same hash code. But the second point, if two objects are equal, then it must have the same hash code value for both the object. This is very important point. These are point you should understand. Okay, yeah. Now next is what is about the equals contract. So in the terms of equals method, first is the reflexive. Dot equals must return true. Okay, if we are checking a dot equals a, then it must always return true, because consider a as an object, b as an object. Okay, second, it should be symmetric. If a dot equals b is true, then b dot equals must also be true. This is symmetric, right? Opposites should also be true. Third point is like transitive. If a dot equals b and b dot equals c are both true, then a dot equals c must also be true. Okay, so this is the one funda, that it should be transitive. Fourth point, consistent, that multiple evocations of a dot equals b must consistently return true or false as long as no field is used in equals have changed, right? And the fifth point is nullity. The dot a dot equals null must return false. If you compare one object with null, then always it will return false. So these are the some contract points. So yeah, so I try to highlight it there so that you can read and you can note it down, so that if in interview you got the question, then you must explain in such manner, so the interviewer will get very impressed to you, and then the your selection will be very yeah, so like your selection will be a very high chance, right? Okay, so let's move to the another question. So this is kind of a tricky question, I will say. Okay, okay. So before moving to the fourth question, let's see. I have added one more slide to make you understand. Okay, so let's see that relationship between equals and hash code. If a dot equals b is true, then the required behavior is that a dot hash code equals to b dot hash code. So both hash code should also be true. Okay, so as we have seen earlier, if hashcode of A is equals to hashcode of B object, then A dot equals may be true or false. It means if two object has the same hashcode, then it is not like that its value should be same. It can be different, it can be same, right? But if a dot equals b is false, then again the hash code of a can be equal or it can be different. Okay, so these are some scenarios which you can read and it is understandable, like already I've explained this. Okay, yeah, so I think it's fine, right? Yeah, so consequences of violating the contract. This is very important. If you try to violate the contract between the hash code and equals, and what consequences you will face. If you override equals but not hash code in your Java program, then hash based collection may act very differently. Okay, so for that, add duplicate to hash code. That already we have seen, right? That hash code, then hash set will should not add duplicate element or object, but it will try means it will add the duplicate, right? So this should not be done. Okay. And again, it may fail to find existing key in a HashMap. It can break the invocation of collection algorithm, right? So these are some point will happen if, yeah, if you try to violate the contract between the equals method and the hash code method, right? Yeah, so like I hope you got this point and try to explain you in a very depth manner, so that you will get the concept very clear, and like this you can try to explain to the interviewer also. So next is regarding the output. Okay, so this is one of the tricky question, I can say. So guys, you can pause the lecture and then you can try to give the answer. Okay, and then I will try to explain you further. Okay, so see, the question is that we have a main class and integer a equals to 128 and b equals to 128. We have a two integer a and b. So if we try to system.out.println a equals to b, then what it should print? So already we have seen that equals to operator, right? So there we have seen, if I try to revise you, we have seen that equals to operator basically, yeah, checks if it is a primitive type, then it checks the value of that content is equal or not. But here you see, integer a equals to 121, b equals to 121, then ideally it should give you true, right? But here, if you try to run it, and then I will ask you to try this in your own system. Okay, so that's why I have not created, yeah, so like I will not show you the practical run, but you can try in your system so that you will get the idea. But I will tell you, here you will get the output as false. Why you are getting output as false? If a is 28 and b is 28, right? Here the key reason lies in the Java integer caching and the difference between equals to and dot equals to method. Okay, okay, so like let me explain you the step by step. First, that equals to compares object reference for object, not value, right? In this code, a and b are object. Okay, because we are using integer. Okay, so a and b are object of type integer, not primitive. So a equals to b. If we check a equals to b, checks whether both refer to the same object in the memory, not whether the values are okay. Yeah, so it checks the memory address, not the value, because here you can see we are using object integer. Okay, because we are using the wrapper class of this integer primitive, so that's why this is object. So it compares with the reference, the memory address. Now the second point is that Java cache integer value from minus 128 to plus 127. So if we are storing anything between minus 128 as a value till 127, then they will consider in stored into the same location. But here you see we are storing 128. Okay, not yeah, so this is out of range of minus 128 to plus 127, right? Because this is 128 actually. So .java internally cache integer object in the range of minus 128 to plus 127 to save memory and boost performance. So when you write integer x equals to 127 and integer a equals to 127 and integer b equals to 127, then in this case we will get the output as true. But in this case, in our case, it will give us false, because it will consider to a different range, so it will not take it from a cached address, right? It will take it, so it will consider into a different address. So Java gives both a and b a reference to the same cached object. If it is minus, between the value is minus 27 to minus 128 to plus 127, but the value is 128, so it will consider into the different memory, right? Yeah, so this is the reason why it is giving us false here, not true. But like 128 is outside the cache range, so that's why this is false, right? And this is considered as a different object in the memory, right? I hope you got this point. Yeah, so in this manner you can explain. So if you have to say in one single line, then you can explain him that that Java internally cache integer object into a range of minus 127 to 128 to save memory and the performance boosting, right? So that's why if any integer value or any object value is between minus 128 to 127, it will consider as the same memory location. But here the value is 128, that's why for both it will consider to a different memory address. That's why we will get false, right? So yeah, so I hope you got the answer of this output. Now let's move to the different question. So can you override a private or a static method in Java? This is also very interesting and important question. So can you override a private or a static method in Java? Let's see. No, you cannot override a private or a static method in Java. Okay. Why? Okay, so for that we need to understand about method overriding. Okay, so method overriding means defining a method in a child class that has the same signature, that is name plus the parameter should be the same as a method in its superclass. So we have a child class, we have a parent class. In this, if we override the parent class object to a child class in such a manner that the name of the method or the parameter of the method are same, then it will consider as an method overriding. And at a runtime, the child class version is called as a polymorphism, right? Now, can you override a private method? Okay, so just understand. Can you override a private method? No. Why not? Because a private method is not inherited by a subclass. Because if we mark any method as a private, then it will consider that that method has the visibility for that particular class only. It will not go to its child class. That's why you cannot override it, the private method, because the visibility of that method is very limited. It is for only for that class, not for the child class. So the child class cannot access it. Okay, and let's alone override it, so you cannot. Okay, so what happens if you try it? So if you actually define a new method, not an overridden in the subclass, if you try to override, if you try to create a method in the child class with the same name, with the same signature parameters and all, so Java compiler will read that as a new method, not a overridden method, right? Okay, so for example, I think I have one example for you. Let me see. Okay, yeah. So let me see this, then I will explain you. Yeah. So we have one overriding class. In this, we have a display method, which is simply displaying some content. That is a parent display. And then we have one method inside our parent class. Consider this overriding concept class as a parent class. It has two method, display and show. In from show we are calling display method. Okay, now we have a child class which is extending overriding concept. So it means child, so this child with the name child is the child class of this overriding concept parent class. Now we are trying to uh, means override this display method, but here you see this is not overridden. Actually, here compiler will consider this as a new method itself. Okay, and when we try to call it from a main method, child c equals to new child dot test, then what it should call? Okay, so let's see. Okay, I will explain you. So here you see in the first output it display child display, and the second it's display parent display. Why child display? Because it is the object of child class, and in the child we are trying to call the test, and in the display again it will call this display, right? Because this will consider as the new method, okay, implemented inside child. Okay, so this is not overriding, so that's why it will show a child display. And if we call show method, then this is child, but show method has been overridden. Okay, so method has been overridden inside our child class, and then it will call the display, and the display method is parent display. That's why it says parent display. Yeah, I hope you got the answer about this, right? Now let's move to the another thing. So can you override a static method? No, we cannot override a static method again. Why not? Because static methods belong to a class, not to an object or instance. So they are resolved at a compile time, not at a run time. And what you are doing is a method hiding, not overriding. Basically, if you try to override the static method, then that is not overriding, but it's actually it will be the overriding. Yeah, so let me explain you. Uh, so for that also I have one example, I believe. So this is one static. Okay, so let's say that we have a one class static method overridden concept. Okay, and we have a display method, and another we have created one child. Okay, so this is a parent class, this is a child class of this parent class. Okay, extending. Now again we have a display method with the static keyword, but this will act as that the this hides the parent method, doesn't override. Actually you will see that we are overriding the method. If you try to override it, then it will hide the parent class, parent object, I mean the parent method. Okay, so we have a man method, and we have created the object of our parent class p. Okay, p dot, if we do p dot display, then if okay, so if it has been overridden, then it should actually okay, so let me run this, okay, better, and then we will see the real time output. So you see we are getting the output as a parent static display. It means it is displaying, means it invoked this display method of the parent class, not the child class, because this will actually hide the parent method. Okay, it doesn't override it. Okay, so yeah, so in this way I hope you got it. So if you try to override the static method, then actually it doesn't override, actually it hides the parent method implementation, right? Yeah, so it means we will not able to override the static method, and also we will not able to override the private method in a Java class. Okay, so now like what is the difference between composition and inherit yeah, composition and like inheritance, and when could you prefer one over the other? So this is also very important. Actually inheritance is like is a relationship. Okay, inheritance, it means that new class. Okay, so if we create a new class that is a child class or a subclass inherited the property from a parent class, then it's called as inheritance. So it is considered as an easy relationship. So and why we go with the inheritance? Because it is used for reusing and the polymorphism concept, so that we can reuse the properties of the parent class in our new class, that is a child class, right? And it also support the method overriding. Yeah, so this is about the inheritance. Next is that inheritance is a mechanism where a new class called subclass acquires the property and the behavior. Okay, yeah, so these things already I have explained you. And here you can see an example that there is one animal class with the method eat, and this is dog extend animal with a bark. Okay, so here in a dog, eat and bark both will come. Eat will come from the animal, and bark is already there with the dog class, right? It means dog can eat and dog can bark also. So in this manner, you see we have not uh, means added the method eat inside dog, but we are trying to directly inherit it or transfer the functionality of the parent class to our child class, right? Yeah, this is about the inheritance. Now let's see about composition. So composition is like has a relationship. So here you can see that engine. Okay, there is an engine class which has a method start, and we have a car class where we are creating the object of engine class, and then we have a drive method, and where we are trying to engine dot start. So it means that composition is a design principle where one class contain a reference of the another class. Here you can see that a car class has a reference of engine class, right? And with this engine class we can call the method of a engine class, right? So it means car has an engine, so this is a has a relationship. So it promotes loose coupling. Okay, and it is more flexible than inheritance and enables behavior change at a runtime, so that is called a delegation, right? So here the conclusion is that car has an engine. Okay, so this is has a relationship. It means composition is like has a relationship. It says that if any class has a reference of another class as a field, then it will act as an has a relationship between the object, right? Yeah, I hope you got this composition. Now okay, so I have a summary table for make you understand more into a better manner. So like inheritance is like is a concept, and composition is has a concept. Okay, and regarding the coupling, inheritance act as a tight couple and composition is a loose couple. So wherever yeah, so if you go with the composition, then it will be very loose couple with the different classes. Regarding the flexibility of inheritance is very low, but composition is high flexible. Okay, change behavior at compile time. Inheritance has a change behavior at a compile time, but composition has a at a run time. It behavior changes. So let's discuss about reuse mechanism. Reuse through classes, reuse through object. So these are some points. Okay, you can remember so that you can understand the points and you can explain him better into your interview, right? And yeah, and also I have added some more points when to use what. Let's see a scenario where you have to reuse the base class logic, then you should go with the inheritance. Okay, you if you have a scenario in your project where you have to reuse the parent class to a child class, then go with the inheritance. Okay, then at that time the composition will not be very helpful to you. Now second scenario, if you need flexibility and change at a runtime, then go with composition, because we know that composition are more flexible. Okay, and it changes work at a runtime. Now the third scenario, if you have a low coupling and a better maintainability, then go with the composition again. Now the fourth scenario, if you want to override a behavior, then go with inheritance, of course. But of course, we can do override to the interface also if you're using composition. Okay, but if you are using class, then go with the inheritance, because we know that already the in like inheritance, the override concept works very well with the class. If you need only some functionality, then go with inheritance. Sorry, then go with the composition. Okay, yeah, these are some points I have added to make you more understand in a very depth manner about when to use what, when you can go with inheritance, when you go with a composition. So this is very means basic, uh, but still it is very confusing. So these point you need to understand to implement into a real project, right? So yeah, so you can favor composition over inheritance. Okay, if the interview asks like when could you prefer one over the other, then you can say composition is more preferable over inheritance, and of course you can provide these points okay, as a reference. Okay, so the next question is that can an abstract class have a constructor, and what is the use? So this is very basic but very important question. I have seen in the many interviews with the different companies, these questions comes up. Can an abstract class have a constructor? Yes, an abstract class can have a constructor. Why abstract class have a constructor? While you can't create an object, because you know that that abstract in abstract for abstract class we cannot create an object, but still it is having a constructor. Why? So there should be some reason, right? So constructor is still called when a concrete class is initiated. Basically when the constructor, okay, so this is also one important point. If we have a constructor in abstract class and we know that that abstract class cannot have an object creation, we cannot create the object on an abstract class, then when that constructor will be called? Because we know that when we create an object of any class, then the constructor of that particular class is called. But here in this scenario of abstract class, we know we cannot create the object of abstract class, but still it has a constructor. So when this constructor get called, actually it called when the subclass, okay, when the concrete subclass is initiated. Let's say if you have a abstract class, you are using inheritance, and you have a subclass, you have extended that child class to this abstract class, then if you create the object of your subclass, then the constructor of the parent class, that is an abstract class, will be created. Okay, and why the constructor is useful in this case? The purpose of the constructor, for this reason, first point is to initialize the common state data members of a subclass. Let's say that you have some properties which you want to initialize. Okay, then the constructor will be very useful to perform a setup task before subclass logic start. Let's say that there is some logic in your parent class or abstract class which need to be done before your subclass logic start. Then you can add in that constructor, because we know when we create the subclass object, then first it will call the constructor of the parent class. In this case it is abstract class, then there we can add the logic. So yeah, so in this scenario it will be very useful. Okay, third point, to ensure consistent behavior and enforce contract. Okay, contract through the required parameter. I hope you got the point, right? So constructor is used to initialize the properties, and also if you have any property in abstract class, then it can be initialized. If any logic is required to be initiated before the subclass logic starts, then of course this constructor will be very useful. So for this reason, the Java people have added the constructor in abstract class. Okay, so if I see with this question, I can see like 2 to 3 questions in my mind, right? Can an abstract class can have a constructor? First question. Second question, okay, so let's say that you says yes, it can have. Then he can ask, like the interviewer can ask, then when this constructor will be called? Again, this is the second question. So you have to explain with the subclass it will be called. Now the third question, then like what is the use of this constructor? Okay, this is the third question. Yeah, so here in this like multiple questions are there. Okay, so next is when should you use constructor in abstract class? So if you want to enforce initialization logic common for all subclasses. Second point, you have a field that require a base functionality. Third point, you want to ensure base class contract is properly fulfilled. Yes, already we have discussed this. Yeah, but I have added this point so that you can note down these points in your notebook, so that means in future if you try to visit, then you will have this point. All right, right, yes, that's why I've added this point in the PPT. All right, yes, already I've explained this. Now the seventh question: why is HashMap not thread safe? So what are the alternative in concrete environment? So first, he may ask that is HashMap like thread safe? If you say no, then of course he will go with why it is not a thread safe, and what are the alternatives you can use in a concurrent environment. Okay, so the answer is that HashMap in Java is not thread safe because it is designed for a single threaded access, and it doesn't synchronize access to its internal data structure, which means that a multiple thread reading and writing to a HashMap concurrently can cause data corruption, infinite loop, and runtime exception. That's why Java people kept is that HashMap should can be run using a single threaded environment only. You cannot use HashMap into the multi-threaded environment because it is built in such a manner that it can be read only with a single thread, because the data corruption can come, infinite loop can happen, runtime exception may come. Then how to solve this problem? Let's say that if you have to use a collection, that is a map, hash map, in a multi-threaded environment, then what collection you will choose for that? Okay, so before that, yeah, so if you try to use HashMap to a multi-threaded environment, then you have to remember that there is a concurrent modification exception will come. So again, like interviewer may ask you what is concurrent modification exception. So concurrent modification exception is an exception comes at a runtime when you are using a hash map in a multi-threaded environment. It means if you are iterating a hash map and another like another thread came and it tries to modify your hash map while iterating by the another thread, then the compiler will read it and then it will throw a concurrent modification exception. Okay, okay, so this is the one exception thrown by in at a runtime because you are changing the structure of a hash map. Actually the structure of the hash map is changed by a different thread, so that's why it will throw a concurrent modification exception. So how you can handle this? Again, the next question may come, how you can handle this? So the you can handle this by using collection dot synchronize map. Okay, first, connection dot synchronize map. Second, you can use concurrent hash map. Third, you can use Hashtable. So these are the three ways you can use. I mean, if you have to use HashMap into a multi-threaded environment, then in the place of HashMap, try to use collection.synchronize_map or concurrent HashMap or Hashtable. But in these three, I mean, the concurrent HashMap is more recommended. Why? Okay, so let's see that. So collection.synchronize hashmap is to wrap a normal map with a synchronize. Means what you are doing, there is a simple map, you are trying to convert this map to a synchronized method basically, so that it can act very well into the multi-threaded environment. For that, what you need to do, let's say we have a map interface, collections dot synchronize map. Okay, this is the method, right? Synchronize map is a method. In this you have to create an hash map object, or if you have already have a hash map object, then you can write it here. So this will convert your hash map, single threaded hash map, to a multi-threaded environment, to means to be used into the multi-threaded environment. So you have to use collection dot synchronize map. Synchronize map is an object, and inside this parameter you can pass your hash map. So this will convert your hash map to be used into the multi-threaded environment because it is suitable for simple use case with a few threads. And one more thing, collection.synchronize map will be useful to be used into the few with a few threads only. Okay, so it synchronize a method label locking. Okay, it provides a method label locking. So the limitation is still needs manual synchronization during iteration, because you need to synchronize again, you need to synchronize this block, right, with like manually, right? Like synchronize keyword you have to use, and inside that you have to do the iteration. So these, yeah, so if, so this can be useful if there is a very few threads in your scenario, then you can go with the collection dot synchronize map. But this is not very much useful with a actual multi-thread environment. You should always go with a concurrent hash map. Okay. And how you create the object with the new keyword concurrent hash map. So this is thread safe without blocking all accesses, because it has a like bucket label like locking is there. It will not lock the whole object basically. Okay, let's say that if you are using a concrete hash map, it has a 16 bucket, then it means a 16 lock will be there, so it will use a bucket level lock. Okay. Yeah, so guys, if you want me to create one lecture on a concurrent hash map fully, then then you can then you can do a comment. Then I will try to create a very depth lecture on this concurrent hash map, because I feel this is very important. Okay, in every interview in Java, this concurrent hash map comes, because we know that this is most recommended collection to be used if you are using a multi-threaded environment, right? So the next point is all concurrent reads and updates can be happen, because it use actually bucket label lock. It means if we have a 16 bucket, then 16 lock will be there. It means 16 write can be done. Okay, but in normal, but here synchronized map, here it will lock the whole object. It means at a time only one thread can use this. Okay, but here 16 thread can write in this. Okay, so this is commonly used in web server, cache system, and the thread safe in memory data store. Okay, so the next is the hash table, but this is old but obsolete. Okay, so with the hash table, new hash table, you create the object. So this is not scalable as a global lock to the all property. Again, it will lock the whole object and all. It has a poor performance in multi-thread environment. So you can replace this by the concrete hash map in most scenarios. So hash table is like old. Okay, but still you can use it into a very limited manner. Okay, you should know that the requirement in the scenarios, but the most recommended is to use concurrent hash map. All right, I hope you got the answer that why HashMap is not thread and what are the alternate means collections are there to be used in a concurrent or the multi-threaded environment, and which is most recommended. So according to me, I will suggest try to provide all the options to the interview and explain them, so that they will get very impressed, that actually they will understand that you have a very very detailed knowledge about this. Okay, now, so this is a comparison I have added for you. You can take a screenshot or you can save this. For HashMap, it is not a thread safe, performance is high, not safe for multi-threaded use, already explained. Collection.synchronize map, it is a thread safe, performance is medium, need external synchronize for iteration. You have to add a synchronize keyword as a block label to iterate. Okay, again, concurrent HashMap, this is thread safe, very high performance because it use bucket label, means bucket a lock, right? So best for concurrency. Hashtable, thread safe of course, performance is low, and again legacy not recommended much. So HashMap is not thread safe due to lack of internal synchronization. For concurrent environment, use concurrent HashMap or collection.synchronize map for simpler needs, and avoid Hashtable unless the maintaining legacy code. Okay, I hope I hope you got the idea, and you can got this concept in a very depth manner. Now let's move to the next question, that's can we use any class as a key in HashMap? Can we use any class as a key in HashMap? Because we know that HashMap has a key and object. So can we use any class as a key? And what are the constraints? Okay, so yes, you can use any class as a key in a hash map. It means if we have any custom class, let's say a person class, employee class, can we use that person class, employee class as a key? Of course, you can use it in Java. However, there are important constraints you need to take care. Otherwise, map will behave very differently. Okay, so to behave this map to behave this map like correctly, if you're using any custom class as a key, you have to check few things. That first, override hashcode and equals method, because we have already seen that what it can bring up if you have overridden the equals method but not the hashcode. For this we have already checked the example. Okay, so I will not go again, you can read this. Second point is the key should be immutable or effective immutable. Immutable means the object whose like memory or it cannot be changed once created, right? So that is immutable. So the key should be immutable. It means the class should be immutable. The key field that particular in hashcode or equals should not change after insertion. So that is immutable. If a key changes, the object might lost the hash map, cannot be retrieved. So mutation breaks retrieval, right? So it is best to use immutable object like string, integer, UUID as a key. But the main concept you should understand that key should be immutable in nature. Okay. So the third is null key handling. Okay. HashMap allows one null key as a key. Okay, one null as a key. So it store it as a special bucket with the index 0. You can do it like map dot put null value map dot null, then again it works fine, right? Because hashtable does not allow null key or value. Okay, I hope you got this right. So you have to null key handling. You should always understand how to handle the null in this hash map. All right. So you can add only one null as a key. Okay, and this null will be stored into the index 0. And how to fetch this? By using map.get null. Okay, so yeah, this is one override hash code determines the bucket in the hash map. Override equals it checks the same bucket. Okay, I mean the where the key is stored in which bucket. Okay, use immutable key. Why? Because it avoid loss of data due to hash changes, and only one null key allowed. Special case supported by hashmap, not hashtable. Okay, this is a summary about this. Okay, now, the next question he got is what is the output of this? Here you see we are simply string s1 equals to abc. We have created a s2 string with the new keyword, and first we are only adding uh, the string but not creating. Yeah, so s1 is an object which has been created with abc, and s2 is an object which has been created with new keyword. So if we do s1 equals to s2, then what is the output? And if we do s1 dot equals to s2, then what is the output? Okay, yeah, so guys, you can pause this lecture and then you can try to solve it, and you can comment the answer of this. So in the first case, s1 equal, okay, so let's see what is happening. Actually, string s1 equals to abc, it is creating one s1 string where the literate is like abc. It is trying to create the object s1 with abc, and in s2 it is trying to create the object with new keyword. Okay, but here the output is why s1 equals to false. So here it means the address of both are different, because one is created with without new keyword, and another is created with without with the new keyword, right? So here the output is false. Okay, in the second case, in the second case, s1 dot equals s2. Here the content is equal, right? abc and abc, and I told you already that in a string, equals method is already overridden, okay, internally to check the content of that object. So s1 and s2 content is same, abc, but they are stored into the different memory location. One is pointing to the string constant pool and another is pointing to the heap. So s1 is pointing to the string constant pool, and s2 is pointing to the heap memory. So guys, if you want me to create a lecture on a string where you like me to know about a string constant pool and no, or then you can comment it out. I will try to bring out a lecture on string and about all string constant pool in a very deft manner, so that you will get the concept. But for this, you can say false and true. Why false? Because s1 and s1 is pointing to string constant pool memory and s2 is pointing to heap memory. That's why both address are different, and the content is same. Okay, that's why dot equals to is all right. Now the next question is that what is the output for this again? So this is a similar question only. There in the previous we are using the string, but now we are using string builder. So the okay, so like you can pause and again try to attempt this. So the output will be Again false and false. Why in this the second output is false? For one, for the first false we know, but why s1 sb1 dot equals sb2 is false, not true? As I told you, right, in a string, equals is overridden already to compare with the content. Yeah, so I've told you that is right, that is a string, but here we are using string builder. In a string builder it is not implemented internally. The equals, I mean, dot equals method is not overridden to compare the content of that. Okay, that's why it is giving false. So here it is here the equals method is not overridden, that's why it is giving false, right? But in the case of a string it was giving true. Why? Because in internally dot equals methods was overridden to check the content, but here it is not in string builder, that's why it is false, right? So the another question is like, what is the output of this? So we have a one class A with a static block and constructor. So main method, and now we are creating the object of this class A. So you can post this. Yeah, so these are the question actually asked to him, and these are very tricky but very basic and tricky also. If you know the concept how the class loading is done by the JVM, and at the class loading time which like properties of the classes are called when and how, then I believe you can answer this. So these are very basic but very tricky. Okay, so here we are getting the object of class A. So how it should means run this program? So first, when we create an object of a class, so JVM checks whether this class A object is already loaded into the main memory or not. So in this case it is not loaded. Let's say this is a phrase application, so class A is not loaded. It will try to load it. While loading, first it will always execute the static members. So static block will be run. Once the static block will be run, then it will try to call a constructor. Okay, with the constructor call it will print constructor A, and before that static block A should get print. So first output is static block A, and then second is constructor A, because when it loads the class, first the static block will be run, and after that the constructor will be called. Okay, yeah. So this is a very important concept. Yeah. So yeah. So guys, these were the some interview questions he has discussed with me for the SCL interview. Yeah. So next, yeah, yeah. And guys, he was got selected in the first. Yeah, I mean the first level of interview. Yeah, so I have the questions of the second level also. So if you want me to share the second round interview questions for that SCL, then guys you can comment it out. I will try to record all those like second round questions for you also. So thank you, and we will see in our like next lecture.